Hi folks, welcome to the A Minute to Midnight show, and for those of you who don't know me, my name's Tony, and today on the show I have a first time guest, Bob McCoskrie from Family First New Zealand. Want to welcome Bob McCoskrie to the A Minute to Midnight show. It's the first time we've had Bob on the show, and it's good to be talking to someone in New Zealand. Nice to have you today, Bob.
Yep, good to join you, Tony.
And the issue we're mainly going to look at is the abortion issue today, which I think is a very important one. And to a lot of people, it's been an extremely significant part of their life and not in a good way. So can you explain a little bit about your position and who you work for and so on?
Yeah, so I'm the National Director of Family First, and we were set up 13 years ago, and we wanted to be a voice in the public domain on issues to do with strong marriages, strengthening families, and cherishing life. And so obviously the cherishing life is a big issue at the moment with both the euthanasia bill and attempts to liberalise abortion as well in the political circles. And also, we're also developing campaigns around the whole attempt to legalise, well, firstly marijuana, but of course the ultimate goal is to legalise all drugs. So we're quite busy at the moment.
Sounds like it. And yeah, so that's Family First New Zealand, and you may as well give them your website while we're at the beginning here.
Yep, sure. It's familyfirst.nz.
Just .nz, not .co.nz, is it?
No, just .nz.
Okay, cool. Now, so on the 27th of February this year, the Minister of Justice wrote to the Law Commission noting the government was considering how best to ensure New Zealand's abortion laws are consistent with treating abortion as a health issue, and the Minister asked the Commission as a matter of priority to provide advice on what alternative approaches could be taken in our legal framework to align with a health approach, and that's from the Law Commission's website. So can you explain to our listeners who don't know what's actually going on with this?
Okay, so this is really just a smokescreen. It's an attempt to liberalise abortion laws. So they effectively, if you look at groups like All Rands, which is the pro-abortion group similar to Planned Parenthood, and also if you look at family planning in New Zealand, which is similar to Planned Parenthood, they effectively say it's purely up to a woman. There's only one party involved, that's the woman. They make no recognition of all of the unborn child, and they effectively want women to be able to have abortion on demand. So coding abortion as a health issue only is basically double speak for we want the right to have an abortion when we want it and up to any stage. So this includes late term, and obviously then you raise the whole issue around the potential for sex selection abortions and also for abortions for disabilities. And of course, you know, the question is how far do you go on disabilities? Does that include a scan that shows that your child's got clubfoot, for example? And obviously the Saving Downs, the Down syndrome groups are concerned about trends towards that area. So at the moment, the New Zealand law currently under the Crimes Act, it recognises that there are two lives, that there is an unborn child, but what it says is that up to 20 weeks you can have an abortion if you meet the criteria, but after 20 weeks you can only have an abortion if it's on the basis of the life of the mother, the life of the unborn child, or in cases of incest or rape would be taken into account. So by removing the abortion law out of the Crimes Act, you immediately take away that 20-week safeguard, that 20-week benchmark. And that effectively means that you're moving down the track of abortion on demand up to 40 weeks. So, yeah, when you hear people say, look, it should come out of the Crimes Act, it's a health issue, basically what they're saying is we want abortion on demand. It's all about the woman's choice, the woman's body, and to justify that, they have to discount the fact that you've got an unborn child and, you know, they say it's 40 years old and we've got to change the law. The fact of the matter is if it's 40 years ago, we used to think that the unborn child was a clump of cells. Of course, now with ultrasound and fetal development knowledge that we now have, that kind of argument is like flat earth science. And we know that, babies, I think I read that the youngest child to survive outside the womb was 22 weeks and 5 days or 6 days. And so, to argue that is just a clump of cells is, as I say, flat earth science. So that's where we're at.
And Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand's Prime Minister, basically campaigned on promising to reform New Zealand's abortion laws, and she actually said people should be able to exercise their own rights, and I, as a parliamentarian, shouldn't stand in that way. So really, right from the word go, it was the agenda of this government to change the law before they were even elected. Well, they weren't really. Nice. Let's be clear. They weren't really elected. It was Winston Peters, whom I voted for and never will again after the choice that he made. Yeah,
for your overseas listeners, we had an interesting situation where a group of three parties that came second, third, and fourth were able to group together to beat the party that won clearly. And so that's our electoral system that we have. So the opposition party has more than the governing party in terms of Labour. But, when those three second, third and fourth parties grouped together, they were able to get over the line first. It's an interesting dilemma. But at the end of the day, Jacinda, you've got to realise Jacinda Ardern has 2 degrees, one in marketing and one in politics. And so she is very successful at the moment because she is marketing messaging around political issues, and one of these is that abortion is a health issue. We're getting the same marketing actually around marijuana, that it shouldn't be a crime issue, it's a health issue. But what they're not saying is that actually it's because of the health consequences of drug use, and it's the health consequences of abortion and the health consequences for the unborn child that it's been recognised as having a criminal aspect to it. It involves the taking of a life. It involves the smoking of illicit drugs. So it's lots of sound bites, and we're trying to break through that, and that's part of the reason that we put in full-page ads in the newspapers over the weekend from some post-abortive woman who wanted to raise a very good ethical question with the Prime Minister.
Can you tell our listeners what that ad, full-page ad was? I've actually seen it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so it basically shows a red line going from the baby at conception through to the baby at birth. And I'll just read you the first couple of paragraphs because it sort of sums up what's being said. It says, "We are writing to you as mothers and as women who have experienced abortion. We identify with the joy your baby has brought you and Clark this past year." Clark's the Prime Minister's partner. "Hearing her heartbeat for the first time, deciding on a name, and now enjoying her smiles and the softness of her skin. The whole nation truly shares in your happiness. We also have a question for you, Prime Minister. And as the debate begins on abortion law reform, it's a question which becomes crucial. When did her humanity begin? The red line on the page represents a seamless stream of time from conception to birth. Where on that timeline would you mark the moment human life begins? What happened in that moment to turn growing human tissue into a growing human being?" And then at the end, the 8 women who have signed the letter, and they have all had abortions, they say, "Prime Minister, so much hangs on where you place your mark on the timeline, because a failure to locate the mark or a failure to be cautious in doing so may find us inadvertently killing human beings rather than merely removing human tissue. And a failure to acknowledge that many suffer after abortion is a failure to care for women's health." So it was a powerful letter. It went in 3 major dailies, 2 on Sunday, 1 on Monday, quite a lot of media coverage. And unfortunately, no media as yet has actually put the precise question to the Prime Minister, but it's certainly generated a lot of discussion around the issue.
Because the media is controlled largely, they're not going to. They're not going to put her in that position. I seriously doubt it, unless someone like you are able to do it, without being controlled, because the mainstream media is just not going to do it.
Well, this is, I guess, the way that we're getting around it is that we're having to pay for ads to get the word out. So we've been saying some of these questions in media releases, but unfortunately, they haven't been reporting some of the comments. So we've taken out these ads, and now we've got some of the narrative going. But you're right, it can be frustrating because I don't think the media are always giving a fair balance. And actually, I made an official complaint to the state broadcaster, Radio New Zealand, just yesterday, because they did some coverage of this issue and they interviewed two parties who are pro-abortion, all RANS and family planning, but didn't have anybody on the opposite side. And as I said to them, if we're going to have debate about these important social issues, the least they can do is present both sides. But I won't hold my breath.
No, because they won't do it. And they won't put Jacinda Ardern in that position because it'll be too uncomfortable. And there's just, I can't see it happening. But anyway, the thing is, it's the truth. What you guys are saying is the truth. Now, I mean, in the years that you've been doing this, have you spoken to other women that have been affected badly by having had abortions?
Oh, look, the organisations that we've got involvement with, and the woman who's sort of headed up this letter works with Living with Colour in Tauranga in New Zealand, and she works with post-abortion recovery. And also our spokesperson on this issue, Marina Young, runs a ministry called Buttons Project.
Sorry, what was that? That broke up. That was called what?
It's called the Buttons Project. And the Buttons Project is where people who have had an abortion send in a button which represents that unborn child in remembrance of that life. And it's kind of part of the healing, part of the acknowledging that the abortion took place, and also allows for counselling and processing of what happened. Now, they are, they have been inundated with stories and women who have regretted the abortion. But also in the ad that we also quoted research from, our very own backyard, Christchurch School of Medicine, and Professor David Ferguson, who recently passed away. But he has been following just over 1,000 people who were born back in the 70s. And he found that women who had abortions were 30% more likely to suffer from mental illness and anxiety problems down the track. The interesting thing about this is that Professor David Ferguson, when he released the research, he's actually pro-choice. He believes abortion is okay. But he was honest enough to say that his research showed that women do suffer mentally. There's an increased chance of them suffering mentally because of having an abortion. And it was the untold story. Now, he got hammered for releasing this research, got told that it had shortcomings and he hadn't catered for that. So he went away and redid the research based on the criticism and came back with the same result. So, it's not a popular thing to be saying, but it needs to be said. And like you said earlier, we need to get truth into this debate.
Yeah, we do. And the thing is, I think all of these things that we try and do and say, you're pushing water uphill with a rake, against the establishment and the mainstream controlled media and so on. But that's not an excuse not to still be using, the voice. So, what does Family First do? And besides this ad, how do you get the message out there?
Well, I think you need to use social media a lot when Facebook and Twitter don't shut you down. Or
that happens to me a lot too. I've been in Facebook jail more times than I can remember.
Well, there's been quite a few pro-life groups in the United States that have had their ads pulled from Facebook in the lead up to these midterm elections happening tomorrow US time. And I never hear about left-wing groups having the same treatment. So, we live in a pretty hostile environment to get our message out, but we're doing it through social media. I mean, Family First, we have a database of 20,000 supporters that we are emailing and getting them to share it. So, they might try and shut down Family First, but it's much harder to shut down individuals who are just sharing some of these posts and sharing this poster that we've put out. And I think we just need to, as much as possible, we're trying to keep the media accountable by challenging them and making official complaints when they are completely and hopelessly biased. Unfortunately, it's almost a full-time job doing that, but we need to make sure they know. But I think the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do is the politicians need to know that when they take on this issue, they're not just going to coast through to a victory. They're going to have a fight on their hands. And Tony, that's the message that we're giving loud and strong to the politicians, and I know that they are getting that this issue is going to be a major one. There's going to be a major fight on their hands because there are a whole lot of people who are passionate about the rights of the unborn child and who are going to make this very difficult for them. And I think, when we put these posters in full-page advertisements, they get the message loud and clear that there is an opposition, and, they need to be aware that that's going to come out.
Now, the Deputy Prime Minister, who's not part of the Labour Party, Winston Peters, I'm pretty sure that he campaigned, or he said before the election, that abortion law reform he wouldn't support unless there was a public referendum. And yet we're seeing this law reform stuff being, bandied by the Labour Party, and surely he has some clout as a Deputy Prime Minister, or does he really? But, what's going on there with this whole thing?
Yeah, I think that is definitely the Achilles heel for the government. So New Zealand First, they are a partner. They have, I think, about equal votes as the Green Party. So they can basically change the government policy, and they did on the 3 strikes law. The government and the Labor and the Greens was set to, get rid of the 3 strikes law, which is a law that targets repeat violent offenders and basically says if you keep committing violent offences, you will get locked up for longer and longer. It's a good law that protects families. But the interesting thing was that New Zealand First opposed that being taken out, so they stopped it. Another example is the synthetic cannabis bill, which has been put through by a National MP, Simeon Brown, and that is to increase penalties for suppliers of this horrendous, hideous drug that's resulting in the deaths of people who just want to get high. Now, Labor and the Greens are opposed to it because they want to go soft on this type of stuff, but New Zealand First are actually calling for National to strengthen it even further and to make the penalties tougher. So you've got this interesting environment in Parliament where you've got one of the coalition partners, New Zealand First, who's actually, you would argue, is a centre-right party, certainly conservative on a number of these moral issues, especially the leader, Winston Peters, and I think that's what attracts a lot of conservative voters to the party. He's very conservative on abortion. He is on euthanasia. He is on drugs. He is on crime. He voted against gay marriage. So I think he voted against the anti-smacking law. He voted against decriminalisation of prostitution. So he's got a very conservative voting record. And I think in terms of marijuana, in terms of abortion, and in terms of euthanasia, the New Zealand First Party is going to be, and maybe your vote will be important, Tony, even though you regret it, it will be important because in some ways New Zealand First might be the party that actually stops the aggressive social engineering of Labor and the Greens.
So is there perhaps a message there to actually get messages to New Zealand First, but because they're more likely to listen than, Jacinda Ardern and the Greens Party certainly won't. But then, I kind of have this, this idea that certain things are set to be changed in the powers that be, which, because I think these guys are in a way are only puppets for people above them. that they'll have agendas that they want to get pushed through. So they may let some of them go, like Winston Peters may have been able to torpedo some. But if this abortion law reform is the number one goal of the powers that be, then they'll make sure that gets pushed through. I hope it's not. Call me a bit cynical, but I think, you know, it's the kind of controlled opposition thing. You allow some things to get through and you stop others so that people feel like they've actually got some say.
Oh, there will definitely be some compromises. And look, we probably saw the worst example of that with the anti-smacking law when you had Labour and the Greens pushing it, and National at the time, who were the opposition party, actually ended up voting for it as well.
Exactly.
In a huge betrayal. So, look, you just don't know what's going to happen in politics, and you don't know some of the backroom deals that are going on as well in terms of, we'll give you this in return for this. So, in terms of people who are listening, Tony, the best thing they can do is to, the people to really target is the New Zealand First MPs, to get them to put a spoke in the wheels of some of this radical social engineering that Labour and the Greens want to do around marijuana, abortion and euthanasia.
Are there timelines on those three things, you know, with the abortion law reform and also the euthanasia and so on? Have we got some sort of timelines that are there deadlines for those things?
Yeah, interesting. The abortion law, the suggestion is that a possible bill will be put forward middle of next year. And of course, because we're making it clear that there's going to be a real fight on their hands, they're going to have to make sure they get it exactly right. So that's going to put more pressure on them. That means that effectively it won't get passed until the following year, which is election year. Now, you know, my warning to the Labour Party is they do not want to go into an election year doing all the social engineering, because that's why they lost power back in 2008. So, you know, it was all the social engineering. People didn't like that. So that one is, bill introduced next year. The euthanasia bill is currently in select committee. Second reading will probably be at the beginning of next year. So I think if that bill was going to be passed, it would be early to middle next year. Hopefully we can stop that happening, and that is quite possible. In terms of the marijuana referendum, I think the latest is that they're still figuring out whether to have it as part of the election, which they should, because then it saves money, or whether they have it separate. Here's my theory. The Greens will want the marijuana referendum at the election, because then more of their dope-smoking Green supporters will turn up at the voting booth and then might give them a tick as well. Labour will want to have it away from the election, because I don't think Labour wants to go in to the next election as the pro-abortion, pro-euthanasia, pro-marijuana party. That they'll get punished for that by even conservatives who vote for Labour, or social conservatives who might vote for Labour. So my pick is that we'll have a special referendum at the end of next year. There has been some suggestion that there'll be a super referendum, and it'll be a referendum on both marijuana and euthanasia. But get this, Tony, as with all referendums in New Zealand, the government will decide whether it's binding or not.
Yeah, well, this is exactly right.
So we listen to the people when we want to.
Yes. Look, I'm totally, I'm thinking back to the 1980s and this is going way, way back when they brought the Civil Union Bill, which of course now there's gay marriage. But I think there were over 800,000 signatures from New Zealanders saying they didn't want it. And that was completely ignored back then. I mean, 800,000 people was like, you know, a fifth of the population or whatever actually submitted. And that was huge, and they didn't listen to that. So these days you're never going to get that kind of turnout on anything.
No.
But, you know, just for people that aren't in New Zealand, how does New Zealand's laws compared to America on abortion in that stand?
Well, my understanding is that abortion is in America is abortion on demand, but within different states, they're starting to get legislation which is starting to restrict that. So they're getting informed consent, they're getting parental notification, they're getting heartbeat bills. So it really does depend on the state. But there's, you know, I think they have a pretty loose regulation around it. And of course, that's as a result of the Roe v. Wade case.
Yeah.
back in the 70s. So
New Zealand is actually tighter. It's harder to get an abortion in New Zealand than in America. Is that right?
yeah, it is. There's more regulations and safety around it, and of course there's that 20-week limit as well.
So this is the globalists, or whatever you want to call them. They're trying to push New Zealand into the an international sort of framework, really.
Well, that's why they have. That's why there has been so much heat around the Supreme Court, because with the appointment of Kavanaugh, and that's why pro-abortion groups were working so hard against Kavanaugh's nomination. They were working overtime into a frenzy. It's because the Supreme Court has now swung conservative 5-4, and that means that a revisit of Roe v. Wade could actually be overturned. So that has huge ramifications. So, groups like Planned Parenthood in the States are hating at the moment because they've got Trump, who is pro-life and is restricting funding. They've got bills in different states which are restricting abortions and defunding Planned Parenthood. And then you've got a potential in the Supreme Court of conservative nominations. I mean, one of the main reasons that so many conservatives voted for Trump, despite the fact that they had trouble with his character, was the fact that they knew he would appoint key conservatives to the Supreme Court. And that was going to have more effect than 4 years of having Trump as president. And it will.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's a good point. Without getting into the debate about Trump too much, I think most people to this show who listen regularly anyway know what my stand on Donald Trump is. I don't trust him. Certainly didn't trust Obama. And Hillary Clinton would have been even worse. But again, there's, I think, an agenda that gets pushed forward, as I said before, and certain things will be allowed through and certain things they won't. And so anyway, we're seeing kind of chaos.
Well, credit where credit's due. I mean, Trump yesterday, and I actually just posted this to our website, was talking about adoption. And he said, and I quote, this is President Trump, "Adoption is a blessing for all involved. It provides needed relief to birth parents who may not, or for whatever reason, be in a position to raise a child. It fosters loving homes for children. It enables individuals to grow their families and share their love, and it fosters strong families. Adoption affirms the inherent value of human life and signals that every child, born or unborn, is wanted and loved."
Yeah, that's a good statement.
So I think, I agree. I mean, I talked to conservatives leading up to the 2016 election, and they said, look, at the end of the day, we've got a pretty poisoned vote. We can vote for Hillary, who will do harm, or we can vote for Trump, who might do good. And that was basically their justification. But I tell you what, Tony, we have that every election that we've had. We've never really had a candidate that we've put all our eggs into the basket and said, oh, man, they're going to be fantastic as Prime Minister. We've really had to hold our breath and hold our nose and figure out, well, who's going to do the least damage? And that's probably how you approached the last election as well. Yeah,
it is. Unfortunately, that's the reality. We live in a system, in a world, in a system that is, well, run by people with questionable morals, to put it mildly. Yeah. So, what do you suggest that people in New Zealand do right now in terms of any of these issues?
Well, I would encourage people to go to our websites on all of these issues. So let me just give them to you quickly. On euthanasia, it's rejectassistedsuicide.nz. On abortion, it's chooselife.nz. And on marijuana, it's saynope-to-dope.nz. And, I'd encourage people just to get on the train with us, sign up to our newsletters through familyfirst.nz. Let us keep you informed, give you resources, give you an update on where these bills are heading, how to respond, how to be involved. I mean, our goal is to educate people as to what's actually going on and give the truth and talk about the real risks and what the debate is really about. That would be the best thing to do. But like I say, I think the real cog in the wheel for this government in terms of the radical social engineering that we're seeing is New Zealand First. And so any contact with their MPs is really important.
Yeah, great. And as far as your mailing list goes, yeah, I would recommend that people get on it because that's how I find out a lot of stuff. In fact, I got your email yesterday, and which is the reason I said, look, can we do this interview today? Which I'm very glad we were able to do it. So have you got any sort of final words that you'd like to share with the listeners before you go?
No, I think we've realised as an organisation that we're not going to win every debate. Unfortunately, we are up against not only the political aspect, we're up against the media, and we're up against a social climate that is all about do what I feel like if it feels good, and self-determination, and a rejection of the Judeo-Christian values that have underpinned New Zealand. So we are up against it. We're not going to win every debate, but we're going to lose every debate if we don't even show up. And we're not called to win, we're called to speak truth. And so in all of these debates, we need to get out there. We need to understand what are the arguments, and we need to speak truth. And, that means you might get called names. You might be labelled right-wing, bigot, fundamentalists, phobes, whatever the label is. Those labels are just designed to try and shut you up. And my encouragement is don't shut up, keep speaking truth.
I find it really interesting that the people that call Christians and pro-lifers and so on and bigots are actually the biggest bigots themselves, really, because they won't listen to anyone else that disagrees with them. They just try and shut them down. Yeah, it's kind of a sad state of affairs, but it's the way it is. Yeah. So thank you for being on the A Minute to Midnight show, Bob, and I'm sure we'll have to get you back again when we have some more updates on these issues.
Yep, no, always available, Tony. Always good to talk to your audience and give them a rev up. I think the key is numbers matter, and if we can all work together and make a noise, that is really important. It's important for politicians to understand that there is a deep reservoir of energy and people who are going to fight on these issues. Excellent,
yep, and so true. Thank you, Bob. Folks, our website is aminutetomidnight.com, with midnight spelt MIDNITE, and we put all of our shows there on the website as well as articles, and you can find our shows on YouTube and on iTunes as well as on our website. We also have a community forum on our website which you're welcome to join if you want to contribute to that. It'd be great in terms of conversation. Also, we run A Minute to Midnight 100% by donations, and if you're able to support us in any way, that is very much appreciated. You can do that on our website as well, and I say thank you to the people that do donate to us. We couldn't keep A Minute to Midnight running without donations, so thanks, folks. All the music used in the shows is written, played and recorded by me, and you can download free music on our website too if you want. A Minute to Midnight's free music page. I think that's probably about it for this show. We will be back with another episode of the A Minute to Midnight show in a few days' time. In the meantime, have a great week. God bless, and this is Tony saying goodbye for now.